So yes, I want to introduce you to Chris Leader. He's joined us in the Newmarket office today. He was popping by to chat with me about the future of some of the training and stuff we're doing here at the company, which is great. So I asked him, hey, why not sit in on an adjustment seminar that both myself and our other esteemed colleague John Smulders is going to help out with, because John does our market evaluation seminar, and he's a licensed appraiser, at least was a licensed appraiser for many years, right, John?
Yes, making me choke just thinking about it.
Um,
Yes,
so
I,
to,
I was, yes.
so today's conversation is a bit of a seminar, but we're going to do a little bit of a more of a podcast style conversation. And it is a conversation, and I think it's a great subject to have this style of conversation about, because as much as John has and John, I don't know if you agree that got it down to a science in terms of coming up with adjustments for market evaluations. It really is sometimes subjective to a lot of different factors. And we're going to talk about those factors and maybe how to present it to a seller or a buyer in that case of purchasing a house as well. So, John, how much of a science is doing an adjustment to come up with a proper price?
Well, there's certainly a science to it, but there's also a bit of, I don't know, voodoo, if you want to call it as well, to use adjustments in on the real estate side. On the bank side, when they are doing appraisals, there's no voodoo involved at all. It's a science all the way. But on our side, there has to be a little bit of give and take, and your knowledge of the area that you are in could have a significant impact on the valuation because you know something specific about the area that would make an adjustment.
Yeah, so I do want to put a big disclaimer, and I'll get Chris's opinion on this, but a big disclaimer ahead of time is that when we're having these conversations, you're going to be confused. Would you not agree? Like, because it is a confusing thing. Like, we're gonna be giving a pull and take on certain things that one agent may see that as a higher value for a buyer, and another agent says, no, it's not really for that area. So, for those of you that like exact science when it comes to coming up with adjustments, you're going to have fun with it, but you're going to somewhat feel frustrated in our answers on how we actually come up with values. Would you not agree?
hmm I do. I think that John's point's really well taken, and I think that you bring great value to your clients when you specialize in a local area and you have an intimate understanding of all the factors that affect price. I also think, John, and correct me if I'm off base here, but I do think that one of the challenges for a real estate professional versus a property appraiser, most of the time the appraisals are done based on a property that has sold and the bank's looking to establish value to protect their position. Um, the thing about a real estate evaluation from an agent's perspective is they're trying to forecast what it's going to sell for. And to me, that's a little bit different. One is way more factual. One is a little bit of an art form, like this is what it's doing. And I'll give you an example, John, and then I'll ask your opinion. When we looked at the pandemic real estate market and we couldn't figure out how high houses were going to go, and we were looking at most recent sales, that's not necessarily an indicator of what somebody was going to pay next week or next month for a house. We can do a trend line on it to see, this is where we're at and where we're headed. But in a market like that, it's almost the market finds the top. It's kind of like when all the offers are in and everybody's given as much as they're going to, that final clean best offer, best price is the one that kind of sets the new value for the neighborhood. What's your thoughts on that, John?
Well, you called it an art form. I called it voodoo. I think it's about the same thing. Um, but certainly a real estate professional or an appraiser must know which way the market is going.
Yeah.
You've got to have your pulse on your finger on the pulse of the real estate market to determine I agree with you. Absolutely, Chris. You got to know.
So I was going to add to that just before we get into adjustments, that in a market that's in retreat, one of the challenges the agents have is what sold 2 months ago isn't necessarily going to be where we are today. And then you're putting that home on the market, you're trying to figure out maybe it's going to take, 60, 90 days right now, maybe longer, 4 or 5 months before we get the right buyer to notice the property with, where is the house going to be in that period of time? Do we get out front of the price? Do we try to get ahead of the market based on what direction it's going? These are all really good, real questions. And I think for all of this conversation that feels a little bit frustrating, I also think that we're blessed with a career that constantly challenges us and creates curiosity. Nothing is repetitive in our business, and it's either you see it as a curse or you see it as a blessing. But you get up every day and it's a whole new experience, and I like that. Not everybody does. People like consistency and rhythm. I prefer the kind of like, what the heck's going to happen today, and where is it all going? So
No house sale is the same, right? Like nothing, like I don't know, there's not one house sale that one, well, I say not one. I like to say that there were smooth transactions when I sold, like, went from start to finish. Oh my gosh, this one was a great smooth transaction, but everyone has unique characteristics. Every home is different, every area is different, every buyer is different, every seller is different, every agent's different.
I think too, one of the things, and John, I'll get your opinion on this, that I think is so important when it comes to evaluations is that there's the science that John talks about. But there's also the emotional component when somebody wants to unload something, or they're getting divorced, or one of the family members is sick, or there's a job transfer. These all affect motive. I've always said, and I know appraisers would probably vibrate with this, but the price goes up and down depending on the person's motivation. If I'm really motivated to dump something, I'm going to let it go for a much lesser price, just get out from under it and move. If I'm not as motivated, then I might be prepared to stay there longer and investigate. Do I get a little bit more if I hit?
Yeah, but I don't quite agree with you on that one, Chris. I think motivation, it might have an effect on value in the seller's mind or the buyer's mind as far as that goes. But in the appraiser's mind, motivation should not be making an effect on the valuation.
Correct.
Yeah.
But it does affect what something actually sells for. And I'll give you an extreme example.
Oh, no, for sure, for sure.
I had a guy list his property with me, and this was years ago, and I was just a kid, and he's like, I want this house sold right away. And let's hypothetically say it was, I can't remember the numbers, but let's say it was worth 100. He said, and this was not a market that was necessarily in decline. He said, I'll put it on at 89. And I'm like, who the hell, why would you do that? And I'll leave the furniture. He sold that house right away, left the furniture. Only later did I find out he was Paul Bernardo's brother and was trying to get the hell out of
Oh,
Ontario
You're
before all.
kidding me.
No. So it was later on. And I realized, like, before Bernardo got picked up for the crime, his brother was like, I'm getting the hell out of here because I know there's something's going to happen, like maybe 6 months before. So he literally dumped the house. I couldn't figure out, like, why are you selling it this cheap? And he said, whatever furniture nobody wants, you can have it yourself. And it was nice furniture. Not that I was taking it, but it was. So motivation can be a little different depending on the extremeness of the situation.
Well, in that case, having the knowledge of being a realtor in that area, and knowing, whether or not there was a murder suicide or does it belong to somebody or doing all that kind of stuff really does make a difference in terms of your knowledge of representing a buyer in that case, going into that area.
No, nobody was killed in this house.
I was just going to say
and
that
when his brother was never charged with any
No,
crimes,
not when
but
it
it just was bad,
Yeah.
bad for him, his name to be.
Yeah, that's true.
All right, let's do your presentation
Let's
because
go
we
through.
can go on.
So I did want to go through to start off. This is a seminar about doing adjustments specific. So I try and keep it on that topic, but at the same time, it's so important to realize that CMAs need to be done. Just start off that, like, I'll be honest, if you do a CMA, you're probably 80% better than most, because I say most agents will go in on a listing presentation and sort of have a feeling of what the house is worth and just give a price, opposed to a proper market analysis done with adjustments and proper thought that went into it. So our conversation today should be the conversation really that you have with your sellers. They're going to ask questions. Well, why did you do an adjustment for 50,000 for the extra bedroom? And you need to come up with the reason why. It can't just be, well, it's just the way I think, right? In some cases, maybe your reputation will get you past that. But for the most part, you do want to come with some statistical information, some sources, reasons why you came up with the adjustments you did, and the CMA or the market analysis that you gave them. So make sure that you do a proper CMA. I just wanted to start off there. Okay. But let's get into, what is an adjustment? Some of you may be wondering because maybe, I don't know, maybe it's been a while since you took your courses. I think they're still covering them in the courses. Have you heard any different? I know John always hears from, no. I mean, they should be doing proper. Is it still just an elective and you can elect not to do that one, John? Do you know?
Yeah, it's an elective still.
Still elective. So there are people that maybe have never been put through a market evaluation, which is kind of crazy, wouldn't you think?
I would think um, that's like sacrilegious. I mean, if you can't do an evaluation on a property, I mean, that's like a primary cornerstone of a business. So we can debate all of the attributes and how and when to apply them, but um, yeah, I would, if I was a homeowner, I certainly wouldn't list a home with somebody who couldn't sit down and lay out sort of what's happening in the neighborhood and how it reflects against my property and where to position my home. And if you can't have that meaningful, thoughtful conversation with a tremendous amount of local research, then I'd be like, yeah, you're not qualified. I am certainly not paying you to list my house. So, um,
Yeah, well, the simplest form of market value is what an active buyer is willing to pay, and then a seller's willing to give it up for. So, what is the market value? Well, it's what the top person's going to pay for the house. The adjustment and where we're coming up with the value is we as real estate agents need to come up with a fair price to put on the market. Maybe we come with a low price to stimulate offers. That's okay too, if you decide to do that. And maybe we take the seller's price and go a little higher and realize we're going to need to knock them down after time, or maybe they just get really lucky. But in the end, they're looking for our knowledge to come up with a marketable price and know why. Why are we coming up with that price? And a lot of times it's not going to be an exact price. It's going to be a range of price. Here's the low, mid, and high, and this is what we can do to market on the low and the mid and the high. So what an adjustment is statistically the dollar value modification that if you take two homes in a similar area and do your comparable approach, and they'll teach you this in the courses. In real estate, we typically will always value, John, tell me if I'm right or wrong, based on comparable analysis. Is that right?
100%.
Right,
100%. Recent sales whenever possible.
right.
Yeah.
So the most recent sale in the most comparable area and most comparable home would be the best comparable to use to come up with your price, correct?
Yeah, that's right. If you have a house and the exact same house sold across the street yesterday, that's a perfect comparable, but that doesn't always happen, which is why you're doing adjustments.
Right. So enter in adjustments. So they'll say, well, my neighbor's home sold for 1.2 and I think I can get 1.2. Now you have to statistically do some analysis of what was the difference between their house and and compare apples to apples. And in order to do that, we have to adjust the subject property, which is the house you're trying to price, right? So if the subject property has an extra bedroom, then you would do a positive adjustment to bring it up. Would that be right, John?
Not
Or
sure
bring it
I
down?
followed exactly
So yeah. So
down.
okay, let's paint the picture again. You've got the exact same house next door, and actually in this case, um, we're going to say comparable house next door, just sold, and it has three bedrooms. And your house, same area, backing on the same lot size, and everything else is the same. Just it just has that one extra bedroom. Your subject house that you're going to be pricing. So you're going to make an adjustment to your house. So you'd be taking up. This is where it gets a little confusing. In terms of the adjustment, you want to make the subject property the same comparable as the one next door. Sir John, maybe you explain it a little bit better.
Sure. The trick is when you're doing adjustments is you always have to bring the comparable equal to the subject property.
Okay.
So if the subject property has four bedrooms and the comparable property has three, you would have to add the cost of, even though it's subjective, you'd have to add the cost of that bedroom.
So you're adjusting the subject property,
No, you never adjust the subject property. You only adjust
just the
the
comparable to meet
comparables.
the sub. That's right. Yeah, you
Right.
got it. Okay, I'm glad you're here. And what you're doing is you're trying to come up with the value of what that extra bedroom would add.
That's the trick.
Right.
What's the value of the adjustment?
Okay. And there's certain values that are almost always done, and then there's certain values that, are going to be outliers. So I've listed some of the ones that are always done, and some of the outliers. So we'll start with square footage differential. You would always do an adjustment for a square footage differential of 500 square feet different, John?
And the great news in Realm and in Treb today is that listing salespeople must put in the accurate square footage.
Yeah.
And so, and if you don't have the accurate square footage, you pay the $5 and you get the accurate square footage out of MPAC.
Okay.
And so, you need the square footage. It's number one, really. Square footage and time are probably two of the biggest adjustments that we do.
So you mentioned time, and I know it's the last one on the list here, but time adjustments that you need to do. Can you explain an example of a time adjustment?
Well, sure. Your comparable property sold 2 months ago. And what you want to do is you need to find out, have prices risen since then, or have prices fallen since, 2 months ago? And you're going to adjust your comparable so that it's equal to the subject property. So the comparable sold 2 months ago. Well, am I rising? Is it a rising market? Do I have to make that sold a little bit higher? Or am I going to reduce that price because prices now are less?
Right. And can you do one for 2 years ago, 5 years ago, a sale that was exact same property, same area, and do a time
Did you
adjustment?
say 5 years ago?
Sure.
Well,
Uh,
I think the HPI tool goes back 20 years, but no, I think in most cases you're going to be able to find a comparable property inside 1 year.
Okay.
I do believe so. I think longer than a year, things start to get a bit skewed. Things start to get a little crazy
Yep.
after a year. 6 months would be great. 3 months even better. A year would be, I think, in today's world on the outside.
mhm.
One thing I have done in the past, and say I'm right or wrong, I've done a market evaluation, a market adjustment, and all the rest of it, and I come up with let's say a price that I think is reasonable based on the comparables. But then I do plug in the time adjustment when this house was purchased over 10 years ago. What was it purchased for? 780,000. And I plug it into that HBI tool, which we're going to show you guys. And then what today's price it would say it's worth. And I found, well, a lot of cases, it's pretty similar. As long as they didn't do any major additions, renovations, and nothing else has changed, technically, from a market standpoint, it should be similar from what it was purchased 10 years ago, because the market's gone up the percentage. Would you agree with
I
that?
agree, Aaron, and I think it's a great double check. Like,
Double
like
check.
you're coming out with a number. Is that a good thing to double check? Sure, absolutely.
Yeah, I always kind of like to, say, oh, wow, I've justified it 3 different ways. And you know what? I feel comfortable with that. Anyway, just a thought. So quality of extent of renovations. That's the hardest one, eh, John? Somebody's redone some bedrooms and put some granites in and stuff like that. Adjustments of renovations. How hard is that?
It can be done two ways. You can figure out how much it costs to replace a kitchen, as an example, or a bathroom, that kind of thing. But what a lot of people will do then is they'll say, well, a bathroom costs $10,000 to replace, right? Well, you haven't subtracted the cost of the original bathroom. And so it becomes difficult. So
Mhm.
$10,000 to replace a bathroom, but originally it's $3,000 worth of stuff that's in there now. So it should only be 7,000. So you've got to be really careful when you're doing quality and extent of renovations. The better way to apply renovations is to apply a square footage cost overall. And so back to the square footage differentials, typically if you're using a comparable and you have a subject property, the subject property is really, really nice and the comparable is just average. Okay. So now you have to bring your comparable equal to the subject property. Instead of adding the cost of a renovation as a kitchen, as an example, what you would do is you'd use a higher square footage cost to make the difference in square footage because the overall house is probably nicer than the comparable property. Did that make sense?
Well, yeah, I mean, and I'm going to always mention this a couple times is when you're doing your adjustments and John has done at a certain way and you may have chosen to do it differently, as long as you've put thought into it and the seller
Right.
can understand that your thought process makes sense, I think that that's probably the most important thing.
Well,
Like
being able to,
psychology, I mean, Chris, you're talking is like psychology of adjustments and doing a listing presentation. So if you're on a listing presentation and you're talking about price and you get to the adjustment section.
So what I would do in a case like that is if we had, say, a new bathroom that they've put in, and I put a new bathroom in my house on the main floor about, I don't know, 10 years, 7 years ago, it was 20 grand, nice
Mhm.
bathroom. Um, it may have cost me 20 grand then. Today, I have to factor in some depreciation. The bathroom looks great, but it's 10 years old. So there's got to be some depreciation on that as well. I think that we want to emotionally connect to people when we sit down with them. Most people are very proud of their house, so you can't run through and become incredibly critical without hurting the relationship. So you have to be thoughtful about how you communicate this. But let's say you're looking at a bathroom that if you looked at my bathroom, you'd say, well, geez, this thing looks brand new. And I'd be like, yeah, but it's just, I think I did it 7 years ago. What did that cost you? Well, I think it cost me 20 to put that in 7 years ago. As a real estate agent, this is where John's voodoo, I think, comes in because you can't give me $20,000 today because it's not a brand new bathroom, but at the same time, it's an upgrade from the bathroom that was there. So if I was doing that math, I'd probably fall somewhere around, you know, I don't know, maybe 14,000, 12,000 for that bathroom as an upgrade, tuned it up, put in some nice stuff, added a little bit more value to the house versus the one who didn't have that across the street. What's your thoughts on my approach, John?
yeah, either one, but the interesting part where this is leading to in my mind, Chris, and I don't disagree with you, is here's what happens is that most agents don't know the houses that they're using as comparables. And so they're looking at beautiful pictures on the MLS. And of course, every picture on the MLS is beautiful. And so now they make a mistake because they're basing it on beautiful pictures. And undoubtedly, we could make your $20,000 bathroom look like $20,000 on MLS when in fact, it's not worth that much. And that's a
Yeah.
mistake that a lot of agents make.
Interesting. So just for the people that are listening, how important would it be, John and Chris, if you saw those houses when they were listed?
Can I jump in, John, and then I'll let you do that one? Okay.
I'm sure we're on the same page on this one, Chris.
Um, First of all, I'm not even sure how many people we have on today, but one of the things I find incredibly frustrating about people in our industry today is they travel too far afield to do work. I'm a huge advocate for local, work local, know what you're doing. If it was me today, I would develop more of a farmer attitude than a hunter attitude. And every property in my farm, I would have gone to the open house. I would have inspected. If another agent had up for sale, I'd go and have a look at it. I'd want to know. I want to become the subject matter expert on my area so that I am the go-to guy. Now, I get very frustrated when I see a new market agent up in Barrie doing business or a new market agent out in Kitchener. And I'm going to say to you that if you're doing that, you're doing it for the commission check, not for the client. And at the end of the day, you're going to find yourself 3, 4, 5 years from now in a position where you're still getting up every day trying to hustle somebody for a house instead of having a whole bunch of quality people locally that are like, this guy's great. He knows the houses. He knows why people should live here. What's your thoughts, John?
Well, I agree 100%. Like I said, local knowledge is everything,
Mhm.
for sure. But unfortunately, I think reality in the GTA today is that it's just we're not small towns anymore. We're not just Richmond Hill, and we're not just Newmarket anymore. We're the GTA today. It reminds me of a story of a salesperson in Thornhill and who's been in the business forever and ever and ever and ever and ever. And by ever and ever, I think about 40 years. And she told me just a few months ago that every Tuesday morning from 9 o'clock till 12 o'clock, she goes, looks at houses. Now she's been in the business 40 years.
Mhm.
Why is she looking at houses? And she still does it every week. She goes and
Mhm.
looks at houses. And I think you might have to, even though I agree with you, Chris, I think in today's real estate world, you have to expand your knowledge outside of maybe one particular area. But I'm agreeing with you as well.
I think Newmarket, if I'm a Newmarket agent, there's more business in Newmarket. I don't need to go anywhere else. if I was in Thornhill, enough business in Thornhill without going anywhere else, or Hamilton, or wherever it
Yeah.
is. I just find that I see, I'm out for a walk in Barrie and I'll see Toronto agents, Kitchener agent signs, and I'm thinking, this is horrible. There's nothing you can contribute to the conversation as an agent from another, some far off land
Yeah.
that
I've just
Yeah.
Roddy Saunders, for example, is a great example. He's seen every house that's been listed in Bradford. I'd be up from maybe 1% that didn't allow him through, but and has made notes on every house for the last 3 years. Like he knows every single sale. Like knowledgeable agent. If he goes against you on a listing presentation, I would be hard pressed to say he'd get the listing because he would be able to prove that he knows every single competitive house and comes up with a great price and knows what's going on out there. Anyway, we should probably move on from that. But it's a very, very important to understand what an adjustment is. A little harder when you actually get to doing them. Every time I go to do an adjustment, I put in the negative or positive and figure out how it works again. And that's why my brain's like, okay, which one am I adjusting? It's a little difficult using the realm system sometimes in order to understand exactly what you're doing in that adjustment section. And I really, suggest that you take John's training on the realm CMA. Not just take it, but watch it because we have it recorded and the newest version's up on Excel as well. And I'm going to show you guys all the tools for this. And I think that's what you're looking for today is some tools on how to do these adjustments. So I'm going to get to some of those things. We'll start off with Realm. Realm is I think the CMA of choice. You know what? I've seen a lot of people now even plugging CMAs into like a chat GPT, do an AI. I want just to preface right now, ChatGPT will never come up with a value for you. It'll just maybe present it in a nice marketable format. I'm actually a big fan, as you all know, of the new AI tools. And I have played a little bit with the CMA opportunity for AI. And what I've done is I've taken the Realm CMA and I've fed it in to the AI system, OpenAI, or if you depend on what you're using, and just ask, can you put this in a nice report format and maybe, a nice cover page and stuff like that. That's where I see the big value in it. Other than that, having the actual CMA done, you have to come up with your own comparables, pretend you're a buyer, do your adjustments and verify the price. John, I have to ask you because you're using Realm CMA all the time with your training. How close are we? How close are we saying it's awesome? I know it was tough at the beginning using it, but I've used it recently. It looks a lot better than it used to be.
I know the realm system has come a long way. Just don't use the automated comparables.
No.
That's because the automated comparables, I mean, you're doing a residential property and the automated comparables are giving you commercial properties as an example. Like, it's ridiculous. You have to know your stuff and choose your own comparables.
Yeah.
Other than that, it's a pretty good system now.
Yeah. Oh, the big thing I was waiting for, and I said, John, I noticed it was there. Of course, I'm not doing CMAs very often, but I checked in on it. And the one thing is you can add your own subject property in now. Before, you could only add the property that was in the system, and a lot of properties aren't in the system because they haven't been sold in the last 20 years. So now it's all fixed up.
That's
Um,
correct.
yeah. Carson Dunlop's renovation guide. Now you've seen this
been a
before.
long time, but yeah.
Yeah, they actually, and if you have Carson Dunlop doing an inspection of the house, they have a nice guide at the back, and it's a guide. It's not, it's not a Bible. It's
Mhm.
not. This is the way it is, but it helps come up with some basic renovation quotes. Square footage, if you're, putting hardwood in opposed to linoleum, or doing carpet, or doing a bathroom renovation. But it also comes up with some, if you did have an extra bedroom, what would that? So it does have some good cost approach. And can you talk a little bit about cost approach opposed to comparable and how the two interact?
Let me tell you where I
Yeah,
used
yeah.
it, John, and then you can tell me as an appraiser, but we would use them up north when we would have unique properties. So I got a piece of property that, locally I can't find a comp for. And if I did, the property I might be similar, but the house is different. And then I've got a three-story Viceroy that's got, made out of BC cedar, and it's got a fieldstone fireplace that goes up 2 stories through the center of the living room. So a lot of times what we would do with this is I would take a look at the land, I take a look at the septic, the drilled well, um, and then I would look at the cost to build that brand new and then depreciate it based on the age of the property and then kind of add all that together. And then I would say, look, this isn't an exact science. This is kind of a whole, mashing of a bunch of stuff together. But if I pull all of this together, that's kind of what I would use a cost approach for. What would you use one for?
Yeah, no, cost approach. We're not teaching cost approach because the direct comparison approach
Better.
certainly is 99.9% of all the properties in the GTA. So we never really went down the cost approach road.
Right.
So I was in another coach trainer was saying, oh, we've got to use cost approach in our CMAs moving forward and all this stuff. I'm like, you're saying the wrong word. You're saying because it's comparable. We always like you, John. You just said we do comparable approach. Then I finally understood this coach was kind of changing up a word that probably she shouldn't have. However, the idea of costing out something for a comparable approach is really what she was talking about. So taking a cost of a renovation and applying that to the difference between the comparable property. So that's where we can start looking at.
So I was taught, John, years ago to do a comparable approach, a cost approach, then a summary report, and then weight the evaluation based on the comparable approach, and that the cost approach was just there as almost a place marker. That was really the.
You certainly, once again, is that a double check
Yeah.
like we talked about earlier?
Yeah.
Sure, if you want to go to the extra work, sure.
Yep, that's good. So some of the things, and we get this from agents all the time. Oh, so, fully renovated kitchen. What do I do in terms of an adjustment on that? And you can start usually, go ahead.
Are we dealing with frigid air or are we dealing with
Right.
wolf?
Well, this is it.
Are you
Yeah.
dealing with a sub-zero fridge or are you dealing with I don't know, Sears?
That's it. Yeah.
So that's that you can't just say, hey, new kitchen.
No.
Did the kitchen get built by IKEA or did you have a custom cabinet maker?
And was it 10 years ago? Or was it last week?
Right.
That's the other thing, right?
Mhm.
Depreciation is what you brought up as
Yeah.
another cost. So to have a seller say, "Well, we put 200,000 into our renovations," well, that doesn't necessarily mean that 200,000 is your adjustment.
No, it could be two things. It could be down because it's being depreciated because of wear and tear, or something ridiculous happened because of the new tariffs we put on all the fridges and appliances. All of a sudden they shot by 20%. So now we have to do a little upward because you couldn't buy a Wolf now for what you bought it for, a year ago. And you're saying, well, what difference that like a top of the line Sub-Zero is probably 40 grand today, maybe more. It might be 50 grand for a fridge.
Wow.
So if you were buying a top of the line, you bought it a year ago versus it buying 6 months from now when they bring it in from the States, if the price has gone up by 15 points, so that might be that could be a unique adjustment that we might deal with at some point.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm going to show you where I've put these tools. And I did take the Carson Dunlop renovation numbers and created a document and put it in the playbook. So I'm going to show you guys where some of these numbers are. But again, it's to be taken not out of context, like it can be taken out of context and you have to put some thought to it. And it's a hard thing to do sometimes when we'll take even like, we'll talk demographics for a second. You'll have an Italian builder come in and go marble and columns and marble and these innate statues and stuff like that in an area that, people don't like that sort of renovation, right? That sort of look. And that could be a tough thing to value and tell them, well, I know you spent 200,000 on all the marble, but people don't necessarily all want that.
Right.
Yeah. So this is where this whole thing can be very frustrating to some people that want just to know, well, I need to know a number. Well, there's a lot of things that goes involved. So back to this, it's a tool, it's a guide, and I'm going to show you where to get it. And that is in the new playbook. We revealed this in the last few weeks. It is located, you can get it on your Google Apps as well as in Remarketer on the Brokerage Hub. But when you click into the playbook, and I will go over it at the end, you can click on working with sellers or buyers. The CMA with John's training, as well as that tool I'm talking about with the Carson Dunlop, and I can show you that, that's in there. So it's in the playbook. Of course, John's presentation and the CMA presentation is in Excel as well. I think it's on our YouTube site too. Now, these two features, are really interesting. I've always been looking for the best way to come up with time adjustments, and we're going to talk about the HPI tool a little bit. Because in the past, I'll tell you how I used to do time adjustments. I'd look at something that was sold last July and want to know what the average price for houses in the area I'm selling in or looking for the price adjustment in. So I would go on, I Google the Trebs Market Stats PDF. I would look back in last July, look for the line item, new market in the areas. Okay, there it is. And there's the average price of 869. And then I look at today's average price of 869. I do the math and realize it was a 10% adjustment that, the house was sold last year. So I need to do a 10% adjustment to make it comparable to my subject property. So that's how I would do it. John, you say right now probably the HPI tool is the best way to do this now quicker. Is that right?
Well, because it's a specific small area, it can definitely be more accurate than the way you do it. But you're absolutely right. The way you did it for all of Newmarket, for sure. Richmond Hill, for sure. Absolutely go into Market Watch and do it that way.
So I don't know if you can see it here. And again, I've got all these tabs open when we get out of the presentation. I'm going to show you some of this. But essentially, you're taking the property area. In this case, if you look really close, you can see it says Bristol, London. It's just an area of a community in Newmarket. And then it says select the date, and this was 2023, and then the previous sale price. So you're actually putting in the date that it sold, the comparable. So it sold back. So you need to find a comparable that was sold in 2023 in that area. You plug the number in, and then it'll give you a price of what it would be worth today, and that would be your adjustment. So in this case, had a previous selling price of 800,000. Today in 2025, it actually would be worth 758. So what does that tell us? Well, it tells us the price went down a percentage. You can do the percentage, but it went down about $42,000. So that's what you would do in terms of the price adjustment on the CMA. And if there's any questions on that, feel free to actually, well, we'll get to the questions at the end to tell you, and then we can actually go in and show you. The other tool it's called Statistics and Counts, because when you run any search in Realm, you can have the statistics of that search. So in this case, I asked for 1 year ago, let's say July of 2024, any detached 4-bedroom home in a certain area, and it happens to be Newmarket. There was 68 sales. The average price was 1.256. Now, if I was to run the exact same report for a 4-bedroom home instead of a 3-bedroom home, I can get the actual difference, and I ran it, and it was a $50,000 difference between a 4-bedroom home and a 3-bedroom home. So I could really statistically prove that most 4-bedroom homes go for about 50,000 more in that area year after year. And is it going to
Can
be
I
perfect?
correct you?
Yep.
Can I correct you here,
Yes,
Aaron,
please.
just so that people don't get the wrong idea of what they're looking at here?
Yep.
So you have a list price and original price, but whatever your search was, you have 0 solds.
Mm-hmm.
Your sold price is 0 on the third line. You have
Oh,
0
sorry.
solds.
Yeah. I
Sorry.
used this as an example. My apologies.
Okay.
But
Yeah,
you can,
just to make sure,
yeah.
to avoid confusion there.
No,
Can I
yeah.
ask
Need
you a question,
solds.
John?
You would be looking for solds. You're right.
Can I ask you a question?
Sure.
And it's a little bit of a takeoff of what Aaron's doing. So Aaron looked at what 4-bedroom homes were selling versus 3 and came up with an average. What if we were to look at cost per square foot and then take a look at the actual square footage increase in the 4-bedroom versus the 3 and apply that? Which one of those two strategies would you lean on more?
I'm not sure I understand you there. I'm sorry.
So
Try
Aaron
again.
took all the 4-bedrooms and averaged them out versus all the 3-bedrooms, and he could tell us what the difference was based on the average. And then
Right.
if we were to take the cost per square foot, the 4-bedroom being larger than the 3-bedroom, and just applied the cost per square foot to a larger footprint, which of those two approaches to the value of that bedroom would be the most reliable?
Well, I think most of the time it's square footage.
Yeah.
Okay.
And a bigger house, all things given equal, a bigger house is worth more.
Okay.
Everything else being equal. Technically, a bedroom is subjective, right? I mean, do you want 3 bedrooms or do you want 4 bedrooms? But if it's the same square footage, it becomes subjective,
It's
and so
interesting
you
is
wouldn't adjust.
the last 20 years of selling real estate in Treb, we have been accustomed to going by bedrooms
Hmm.
improperly, but accustomed because we never got the actual square footages. And a lot of time
Ah,
we
And
were
now,
yeah.
but
Now
but
moving
now,
forward, we can actually do it properly.
now I was
right?
going to say there are some things that I would challenge my strategy on.
Mhm.
Like for instance, you can't apply square footage to something like a bathroom or a bedroom, in my opinion, only because it can be such a wide range of quality in that little space, right? So I think there has to be some intervention from an agent's perspective. And I would imagine you could take the square footage of a finished basement and almost, again, if you didn't go over the top with stuff, it's pretty standard, a 9 foot ceiling, subfloor, what that looks like. You could probably get within spitting difference of a price on that too.
Yeah, so as long as you have enough sales, as long as you have, and John, you were like saying 200 sales gives you a pretty good idea. But
Oh,
if you're talking about 10 sales, you're not going to get a very accurate number.
Yeah, like I like to tell people when I'm doing the CMA presentation, sort of 15 is probably the bare minimum that you need to get an average price that is probably meaningful to get a good statistic.
okay.
150 is obviously a lot better to get a good
Yep.
average.
Yep.
Absolutely. I want to talk pools for a second because it's one of the biggest. There's two
I
pools.
want to hear what John's got to say. I got a
Yeah,
pool, so I want to hear
yeah,
what he's
yeah.
got to say.
So, so pools, and I've got my own opinion on this, and sometimes this, has people have different opinions. Um, if you're adjusting for a pool, are you adding the value of the pool? So I'm just saying, so you spent 100 grand putting in a pool. Are
You
you going
can,
now less
I
depreciation?
don't know if you spent 100 grand on the pool or you spent
Let's
100 grand on the
Yeah,
landscaping.
everything that you did in the back, you spent
Uh,
$100,000. Maybe it's 50 on the pool and another 50 on the landscaping, but you spent $100,000
So
in your backyard. You got a pool in it. What do you do for the adjustment?
so first of all, a pool is subjective, right? As soon as you say I like or I love, it is subjective. So should you be adjusting for a pool at all? And now the answer is yes, if you know the area. So now you're in an area in Newmarket where around the block, everybody has a pool. Well, then probably you're going to adjust for the pool. But now you're in an area that this one house amongst 150 houses has one pool. Well, you're probably not going to adjust for that pool. So now your local knowledge is coming into play here
Yeah, and
because because
yeah,
it's subjective, and that applies to bedrooms too. There's, family neighborhood, 4 bedrooms. Sure, you might want to add a little bit for that fourth bedroom. But if you're in a seniors area and it's got 4 bedrooms and everybody's just 2 people living there, why
a
adjust
bungalow
for
with
the
four
bedroom?
bedrooms. Yeah, a bungalow with 4 bedrooms that are smaller opposed to a bungalow with three or two even. Say
Subjective. You're
subjective.
adjusting for square footage. You're
That's
adjusting for square footage.
You really need to think on your feet, don't you? You really got to think about it as a buyer.
Well, I like Chris's word of an art form instead of my word as a voodoo. But it is definitely there's an art form in there. There's no question about it.
Do you become a better painter the more pictures you paint?
Well, I certainly haven't.
Do you paint a lot of pictures, John?
Well, I'm thinking from an evaluator's perspective, the more
You would,
houses
yeah,
you evaluate, the more comfortable you become with some of these things we're talking about.
yeah.
Oh yeah, I did 120 appraisals a year for the Bank of Montreal. You just did it automatically. You didn't even think about it anymore.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, when it comes to the pools, one thing I always said was it can add that. Well, in fact, we do the adjustment for the pool, not for full values, depreciation, all the rest of it, or what somebody would pay to have that pool. The thing is you're just taking your pool of buyers and you're shrinking it. So instead of 80 people looking for it, you're having 20 people look for it. And it's just going to take a little longer to find the person that will find the value and pay more money.
So not everybody wants a pool.
Not everybody wants it.
And what I would do if I was the agents that are on here today, if that's something that you've got a bit of a good vibe about, you like pool life, then maybe one of your unique little niche markets is you become the pool expert. You
Yep.
can know the difference between all the equipment, the salt water versus chlorine. And quite honestly, everybody goes to get their water tested every couple of weeks at the pool store. I'd have those water bottles then up with all my logos on them and give them to the pool store for free. So everybody's like, hey, Chris Leader's the guy who specializes in swimming pools. That's
There
like a
you go.
no-brainer. And then I would pull the permits for all the houses that have pools, and then I would surgically mail
Yep.
to them, not generically. I would surgically mail to the pool people.
100%.
And then I'd put on a seminar every spring about how to maintain your pool properly. And we'd have seminars in that, so everybody would look at me and go like, if I'm selling a house with a pool or I want a house with a pool, he's the guy I'm going to go see who does, he's the pool expert, right?
And you'll get the URL, houseswithpools.com.
Yep.
And then you'll create a group selling houses with pools.
And then you'll create a Facebook site where they all get together and talk about their pool challenges and what's going on and what's new in the world of pools.
And then we'll have a whole seminar on real estate agents with niches and explain all this again. Because I think it's a great sound. Like you're absolutely niches are so important when you're marketing right now. I think it's a really good.
And John, if you sold a bunch of houses every year that were pools, you'd know how to evaluate that upgrade or where to place it in reference to the neighborhood or whatever. That's your thing.
Oh yeah. And in fact, in statistics and counts, I have looked it up a couple times in the last few years. Houses with pools are generally less valued than the equal house beside it without a pool.
Oh shit!
Just
Don't
to
tell me
let
that.
you know.
I got a pool and a hot tub, and I got the whole thing going on back there. It's like
You're,
my.
you yeah, but you balanced it out with a $20,000 bathroom, so you're okay there,
All
Chris.
right.
Um,
I just don't want anybody to use the bathroom.
houses with corner lots is another one.
Oh,
Corner lots, right? So some people, I see it a lot less, I think, but will value a house that's a larger lot because usually the corner lot is larger. It has a nice big frontage, and they typically do that to get it sold. But sometimes that can also, I would like to see that, John. You run a report to see all the corner lots are sold in the area. I find that
there
that's
used to be
something.
there used to be a. I don't know if it's true or not. Corner lots were more expensive tax wise.
Yeah, they are.
All right.
Yeah,
So
because statistically they're a bigger lot.
yeah. So I mean, there was more money to buy a corner lot. So I don't. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, you're paying for something that is less valued sometimes. Sorry for all the corner lot people, but some people like it, right? So they get that. You don't have a neighbor. Okay.
Kind of.
You
Kind of
just said the magic word, Aaron. You said the word some people like it. So that automatically means it's subjective.
subjective. Yeah.
Yeah,
And you were told not to be subjective as an appraiser. There you
as
go.
an appraiser, exactly.
So the absolute truth is not always the adjustment, right? So, and we've talked about this already. Just knowing that those high end renovations, having a house that you let's say had just overdone in terms of renovations. Um, this is called the principle or law of recession and regression and um, the law of regression and what was the other one? The law of I had that before.
Diminishing returns.
No, it's regression and progression. So regression is in an area that will bring your house down. For example, you have the biggest house in an area of small homes, opposed to the other way, which would be the smallest house in an area of huge, estate homes will bring up your price. And so when you're over, renovating a house, and a good example was one Chris was telling me about.
Well, it was one up in
the wartime.
Yeah, that was overdone. But think of it this way. There's a simple way to think about it. People who don't have money want to hang out with people who do, so they'll pay a little premium to be in a nicer neighborhood. People who have money don't want to hang out with people who don't. So if they got a nice house, they're going to sell it for a little bit less in that neighborhood because it's not going to command the same location. But to Aaron's story, I had a house one time that I listed for sale. It was a wartime. If you're not familiar with that term, it's a house that was built right after Second World War. They usually were a story and a half. And what made this one really difficult, John, was the whole neighborhood was made up of wartimers. This guy had tuned this property up from top to bottom with an in-ground pool, hot tub, fabulous patio, gas fireplace. The inside was spectacular. And where the house was situated, it was on a corner, but it had only the corner house did, but it had a spectacular view from the front deck and the side deck of all of Georgian Bay where we were. Now, how the hell you put a price on this thing? It was really difficult because everything else in the neighborhood was nowhere near as nice and didn't have that view. At the same time, square footage wasn't bigger, but it was tuned up and it had a view that really there was very few houses in the whole town that had that. So I don't, it was hard. It was kind of, we set the price and find out sort of what somebody would eventually write an offer for and they could agree on. But
Yeah. So putting those values and doing adjustments for those homes, you just have to know that it's not always going to come back to you. So there are ceilings for certain areas, right? That this area only dictates 1.5 and they built a $2.5 million home. Well, it's probably going to go for 2 million instead of 2.5 because of the principle of regression. So keep this in mind, and we just bring it up as a knowledge base more than anything else, and to be aware of that, right? We talked about geographic, demographic areas and the importance of that. So we've kind of already gone through this. Knowing your own town, right? That there is a certain buyer for your town and where they're coming from. So Newmarket was always pulling on the east end, was always pulling from Markham. So some Chinese on the east end, and you got a Woodbridge on the other end. Bradford, for example, just down the 400, get a lot of Italian buyers in Bradford. So basement apartments, family homes. Like there's certain things that people will look for. Chinese typically will like feng shui, different numbers, and as well as light hardwood instead of dark at the time. The light hardwood was started to date homes, but you found that the Chinese really like light hardwood. So different things will work in different areas based on demographic information. Yeah. Yeah. And the whole thing with if you walk in and
I knew that.
you can see from the front to the back, your money's going to go out and all this sort of stuff. I mean, try and do adjustments in areas such as Markham. There might be adjustments for feng shui, for example, right? Like there's different factors. You got to know your area. Newmarket, selling in Newmarket for 20 years, I knew that basement apartments didn't add a lot of value because not, unless you're looking to use it as an investment property, there's a whole different approach to that. We weren't doing in-law suites. You weren't having your family move in. The mom and dad weren't moving into the basement. Whereas Woodbridge, very popular. Anytime you're selling hope that people really wanted that extra in-law suite.
When I look at some of the Europeans, I even found that even though they weren't using it as an in-law suite,
Yeah,
especially Italians, they like to put second kitchens in the basement.
they did.
They love
Always.
to cook in the basement in the
Yeah.
summertime where it's cool. And that was, if you're in an all Italian neighborhood, they'll pay a premium if you got a really great kitchen down in a second kitchen in the basement.
And they love tile, and the tiles in the basement, it's very
Yeah.
cold floor.
Yeah.
I mean, this is just what you find a lot in Woodbridge.
Yeah. Yeah.
Got to know your area. So, I mean, we can beat a dead horse, but I think we can move on from that conversation. Yeah, so build trust through transparency, just making sure that you have these documented adjustments, knowing that the person sitting across from you to win the listing presentation needs to know you've put some thought into this and haven't just come in here and said, I won't say the name of the agent, not with Century 21, but he was the #1 agent in Aurora at the time. And I did beat him out in a listing presentation. And the comment that the seller said, well, this guy came in, took a look around and said $699. And I said, well, why, how did you come up with that price? And he put down like a stack full of all his certifications and everything. He says, because my name is, and he says his name, and I know this, like I own essentially Aurora. And of course, I came in with the proper adjustments and the whole thing. I put some really good thought. He goes, he just would never use the guy because of his arrogance, and he didn't put some thought into it, and he just said it's because I am. So you can beat the big names in town if you do your
Quality
research
work.
and quality work.
Quality work,
Yeah.
and I think that you connect with them on a personal level. You don't have that, you have that sense of humility about you, not arrogance, like you were saying.
Yeah.
And I don't care how long you've been in the business, if you brand new, but you've done a tremendous amount of research, it adds so much value to who you are as the person sitting across from that seller who's trying to make a decision on who's going to be the best person to represent me in the marketplace. So I think if you guys really, really, really do your work, I don't think it matters how long you've been in the business. In fact, if anything, those newer agents that do a lot more digging are probably going to smoke the experienced agents that are relying on their experience, not their research. So
And some people are visual. Some people are. I do find the school teachers, for example, they like I made the mistake of misspelling something in one of my, CMAs once, and this teacher found it. She was like, "You made a mistake over here." They want the detail, right? Dulal, go ahead and unmute yourself. You had a question.
Okay, I have question. Just now, you discussed right this one. This someone just have a looks and give the price. I what no, I want to mention. Okay, you do proper CMA, everything all correctly. You do proper CMA and same time you visit multiple property on that area and same time you're going to list one property which that property you visit nicely and slowly and check every single details which is updated, which is not updated, everything. Do proper CMA and you come out with price, this 799. Okay, what happened, nowadays is seller or buyer over smart, then they call another real estate agent. He say, okay, can you do for me CMA and can you tell me how much I can sell? If okay, then I'll give you tomorrow listing. Another person come do CMA, everything all, and what, he do some adjustment and he say, okay, I can sell your property 810 or 815. This seller, what he do, he give to that person who can sell 820. And unfortunately, by luck, sometimes luck is different. So what happened, one buyer go and that particular property, and they like it. And this I saw in myself, I saw this a lot of buyer. Sometimes when they like the property area wise, they don't mind pay extra 15,000, extra 20,000, even extra 30,000 too. Okay. Then that listing agent sold property within 1 week is 820. On that time, can you give me some answer how to answer their sellers? Because their seller come
What's the
back
question?
and say,
So,
what,
so I'm gonna rephrase the question, and then I'm gonna give you a quick answer. I'm gonna actually turn it over to Chris because he's the best at overcoming objections, which is where I thought you were going with this at the beginning. But what you're saying is that you came up with a very detailed, very well thought out CMA. You thought you had the nailed at 799, right?
right?
And you thought that you had it nailed. Somebody else came in and said, well, 899, and they ended
No,
up
no,
getting.
no. It's not 899. It's 100,000 difference. It's
Yeah.
820, 819,
Well, it went for 819, you
819.
said, but they listed it for 899, didn't you say?
No, they what
850?
819. They listed price and sold price same. Is that they
Okay,
listed at
sorry. So they came in and
819?
said, no, I can get you an extra 20,000. And they
Yes,
actually
right.
did. They got the extra 20,000. My quick answer is they knew something, or at least got either lucky, or they knew something that maybe you didn't know, right? So they
Or ended up
actually
with
got
multiple offers.
or multiple, but in the end, their approach won. So you take that as a learning experience and say, hey, sometimes they get it right and I got it wrong, and they got it right. That's all. They happen to have
Okay.
got it right, even though they just got it right. Anyway, go ahead there, Chris.
So Dalal, there's some foundational problems with what you explained to me. So if I'm sitting with the seller and I've done my CMA up and I've got a really good CMA and all my research is done, the dialogue going into the conversation, the first mistake I heard was, I'm going to tell you how much to list your home for sale. I wouldn't personally do that. What I would do, Dalal, is I'd say, let's take a look at all the properties that have sold most recently. This will be one metric for you to consider when you put your home on the market. And then let's take a look at all the properties that are presently for sale and where your home needs to be positioned in relationship to the competitive properties. The good news is I brought lots of research for us today to go through. So you're not going to have to guess at the price. But let's go through the exercise. This is how most successful sellers choose the right price. So Dalal, what I've done is I've pushed the outcome off to the seller. So let's say that we've had a sale in the last month and it sold at 805,000. And it's very similar to yours. Maybe yours isn't even quite, it might be not quite as nice. So we take a look and we say to the seller, we say, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, this one sold most recently. And it had, yours is 2 full baths. This one was 2.5. This one sold at 804. That's, if we use that as a reference point, where do you think your home should be listed? Well, it's got to be around that. Okay, fair enough. The second category we need to look at are the ones that are presently for sale, because the way a buyer shops is they go out to look at homes that are very similar in the neighborhood, and they're drawn to the one that offers the most for lease. So let's take a look at everything that's out there, and then I'm going to ask you again, where do you want to position your home? Understand, if you overprice it, you make other people's homes look attractive. If you underprice it, you're probably going to invite offers in this market that are going to be less than the asking price that are going to be disappointed. So what I want you to do is take a look at the houses again, and you tell me where you think. Now, when the person says, well, I think I want to list it at 830, I'm going to say 830, let's take a look at everything that's south of us. And they start to look at it and they say, well, looks like this one here is a little better price than ours. Yeah, I'd agree. So where do we need to be? So the idea is, instead of telling people, Dalal, what I want you to do is ask questions that are designed to bring them to the number that you feel is the right number. Now, here's the difference. Psychologically, if you tell somebody what the price is, they're going to be suspicious. If they decide that this is what the price should be, they'll own it. So what you need to do is become masterful at using questions to get them to arrive at the place you need them to be. What you're talking about, Dalal, is elevating a salesperson's game to a much higher level. We're talking about being a sales master here. It takes no skill to lay something out and say, this is what your home is going to sell for. That's amateurish. Real quality people do all the homework. And then when a person isn't falling in categorically into the space they want them to, they don't tell them to change. They ask questions to get them to uncover where they need to be. So there's a lot of quality has to go into this. I personally, if I was competing with that other agent, the first thing I would have said, if they wanted to interview some other agents, I'm curious, can I ask you why? And you can role play this with me, Aaron. So why would you want to interview some other agents?
I just want to get an idea from different people and maybe make an informed decision on who to use.
Okay. So setting the marketing side apart, because that's really the area that you want to compare apples to apples. You want to see who's doing what in marketing. Because there's two things that are going to cause a property to sell. The property's got to be made aware, people need to know it's for sale, and then it's got to be priced correctly. So let's set the marketing aside for a second. We'll come back to that in a minute. But let's take a look at the price right now. And the reason I bring this up is pricing a house is not an art form, and selling it for a price isn't an art form. It's a science. And the math on this is really straightforward. And interestingly enough, whoever you're going to get as a competing agent for this opportunity is going to be drawing from the same pool of information that I am. So it's not like magically they have sales we don't know about or houses that are on the market that we're not aware of. It's all the same real estate. And at the end of the day, the bank is going to let you pay the buyer pay the purchase price or the appraisal, whatever is the lesser of the two. So this isn't art. Art's in the marketing side, and I want to talk to you about that in a minute. But let's take a look at the science. And the good news is I've got lots of data. You're going to be able to choose the right price. Hey, if I'm not the right agent, it isn't going to be around price. It's going to be around my marketing strategies, because at the end of the day, nobody can sell a house for more than it's worth. Okay. So, and then I would tear that apart until I would get you to agree to the price I wanted. And then I'd go back into the marketing side, and then I'd smoke the competition on everything I'm doing. Plus I would do all the other stuff, show up on time, bring my coffee, my flowers, my carrot cake. I'd be, loving them up. And at the end of the day, they're going to be like, oh my God, give it to this guy. We just love this guy. So we got to be salespeople, not transactional people. We got to build relationships. We don't sell houses. We help people build futures in homes.
The legend here. This is the reason why.
Thank you. Thank you.
This guy's great.
Thank you, guys. Thank you.
Amazing. Yeah, I mean, you can do all the adjustments you want. The nice thing is, talking about doing a proper CMA and adjustments and putting some thought into it is that, it's there for you to be impressive without necessarily the 40 years of experience and coaching that, that definitely gets you to the point where you're
the reason
really good salesperson.
Well, the one reason you won that listing that you talked about is because you did your homework and the other guy didn't.
Well, this is it. Yeah.
I'm going in to see a doctor and they're like, it's no big deal. We'll just pop that thing out. And then you got another doctor who says, let me walk you through the steps. Let me share with you how this is going to work. And let me tell you what the outcome is going to be. I'm more inclined to feel comfortable with the person that's kind of explaining everything than the person that just says, yeah, just trust me. Yeah, I've heard that too old. I'm too old to say, just trust me.
You combine those two though, the sales, being a really good salesperson
And a good
but
mathematician.
and be able to have everything.
Yeah, like John and I would make the perfect real
Oh
estate
yeah,
agent.
you guys would be
We'd
great.
be perfect if we were one person.
Yeah.
John's the engineer, I'm the sales guy. I mean, we'd be the perfect pair. You know, if you put the two of us together, we're like a knife and a fork.
Yeah.
That's what makes a meal. You know, what makes the best meal possible is a knife and a fork. You got to have a knife and a fork. Can't have two knives. Can't have two forks.
And always better one presentation over the other, just like this presentation I'm giving. There's certain things in here that I'm, learning the way the dialogue is. Remember, clients who trust your methodology are more likely to trust your recommended price. I would change that dialogue. It's their price. And you need to,
the outcome.
It's to the outcome. Or, if we can get them bought into making their own decision, their backs get down too, right? They're like, oh, we're in this together.
We're in this together.
Yeah. I like it. Final tips. Now, this is where we're going to have a little bit of a difference of opinion on things. I typically like, I'd like to, because I've heard John, I typically like 3 solds, 2 listed properties. That's kind of my nice little area. I've given you a history of 3 sales. I got 2 that are currently on the market. So that's 3 truly comparable properties. And I think, John, you've mentioned before, gosh, just 2 or 3 tops. Where are you at now?
So appraisers do 3. It's simple. They use 3 comparable properties. Now, I love the idea of having what the competition is doing as well. But what I would recommend is not having that in your CMA, because you know what you do then is you have the 3 sold prices that are all adjusted. You have the 2 list prices that are out there, and now you have an average that's wrong because you've added up all 5 and divided by 5 to
Why
figure
would
out
we do
what the
that?
average is.
You're right,
And
John.
so,
I would do my sales separately and my for sales separately.
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Good.
So
Excellent.
3.
I agree with you 100%. That's amazing. That's great. Yeah.
Now, I came from a market where there was too many houses for sale. So we would use 5 comps that are presently for sale because there was so many, which is kind of the market you're headed in that direction. You're not there yet, but you're headed that direction. And then solds, probably, John, because the solds were far and fewer between, we'd have to go back further and make some adjustments, but we try to grab the most recent sale as our sort of our bookend.
That's right.
The next thing is the outliers, the stuff that people don't know. Why did that house go for that price? That seems strange that it went much higher than it should have or much lower than it should have. There could be outliers, right?
So I would get a call from a John, and he would say to me, I don't understand. Why did that house sell so inexpensively compared to everything else? And I'd say, well, John, I don't know what you're going to do with this, but that was a divorce. And they were either going to burn it to the ground or get rid of the damn thing. And I brought the first buyer by, and they were like, we'll take it. I can't get fast. War of the Roses, can't get fast enough away. So, and I would have appraisers sometimes pull those because they would say this isn't a relevant comparable given the emotional decision that was made around that. Or sometimes a family member would buy the house with no real estate agent involved and at a little different price. There was some sort of deal there in the family. Different things like that could screw stuff up. What's your feelings, John?
Oh, yeah, no, we used to call, when I was doing appraisals, we used to call other realtors on a consistent basis to find out what was actually going on with the sale price. Absolutely. And there's nothing wrong with the agents that are on this call today if they're doing a CMA and they're not sure, pick up the phone and call the listing agent, find out why it sold for what it sold for. If there's, like you called it an outlier, Aaron, and find out why. Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah.
I figured out why my lawyer got such a good deal on his house. The previous buyer, he killed himself in it. So, and I was like, I always wondered, like, how come he got such a good deal? Then I found out. I was like, oh, okay. Yeah.
So just other statistical market information, things like current inventory levels, buyer seller market, sold to list ratio, days on market, average days on market, consider all these market dynamics, not just adjustments, of course, right? Managing expectations. If the current average market days on market's 30 days, which I think is probably a good market, you have ones that are 60 and ones that are 1.
You got ones that are probably on for 5 months.
Right. So explaining that to people and explaining the numbers. People often say, oh yeah, everybody's going to be doing these, those AI generated market analysis, or they can get the solds through, online now. Even Realm gives solds out now, so they're educated. They know. Well, they just know the sold price. They don't know why, right? And they don't know the market conditions and the difference. One, even one street makes over another street next to it. So without context, that's just data. So making sure that you take that all into consideration. We also said, when in doubt, review with CMA with your manager, mentor. Practice builds proficiency. That you said, the practice, the artists practice will make them amazing. 10,000 hours. And every market evaluation strengthens your pricing expertise. Absolutely. Now, the one thing I will tell you, I get the question all the time. Can you help me with this price on this house? And my usual answer is, well, absolutely. You can, let's have a discussion about that. Or more likely, well, I can't, right? I can help you with all telling you what you need to do and what you need to do to come up with your price, but you're going to need to do that research. If I give a price on a house in Aurora that I don't know what the house next door sold for, I've never been through the house, I don't know your sellers, I don't know the year, I don't know motivations, I don't know anything about that presentation, I'm going to be less likely. And if I give advice from the managers, or your managers give advice on that price, it might actually be detrimental to your presentation, because only you, as a real estate agent that has done all the research and seen all the comparables and really got right into it, would know what that proper price is. So the answer is, well, you're going to need to do some work. And bottom line is that's it. I could have 20 years, 40 years of experience in the marketplace. Chris Leader is one of the top coaches and salespeople I've ever met and ever know. But if I ask Chris to help me price the house next to me, he can't do it. Not without all the next
Homework.
4 hours and homework and everything he needs to do to get it.
So if I was an agent and if you were an agent and you came into me and said, can you give me help with the CMA? I'd be, yeah, here's what I want you to do. I want you to go away and do your CMA. And then I want you to come back and I want you to do a live report with me on why you chose certain comps, what adjustments you made, what similar properties have sold for, what adjustments you've made for time and location. But you go away and do all the homework. And then I'll pretend to be the homeowner and I'm going to ask you some very pointed questions when you come in and if you've done your homework. Now, here's what I would do. I'd book that appointment with John. No offense, Aaron, but John's a property appraiser.
Yeah.
And I would use John because he'd look at my CMA and say, you can't do this. This is wrong. Where the hell did you get this from? Get out of here. Go do it again and come back and see me.
You know what I do first, Chris, is people ask me all the time, and I don't know if you know this, Chris, but I didn't sell houses in the GTA. I don't know the value of houses here. And so people come to me all the time and say, how much is the house worth? Can you help? And I say exactly what you said, except for one caveat first. I say, here's the link to watch the video. Watch the video, then do the CMA, then come to me and we'll fine tune it together.
Perfect.
That's the way I look at it.
That's
Yeah,
what I would have done.
absolutely.
Now, I had that same experience. So, when I started in real estate at 18, there was a man in my office by the name of Al Reed, and he was basically John. He was a property appraiser, and he had an appraisal company in our real estate business. And our broker made us go to him every time we were going on a home, like a listing presentation, and we'd have to go in and argue our comparables, talk through the cost approach, come through the summary like we were going to court in a divorce, and choose the most relevant property with the least amount, and then we'd build a case for that. And the whole idea was
right.
before we went into let's see the homeowner, the appraiser tuned us right up, right? I mean, the guy was hard on us. And so when the homeowner asked the tough questions, like we had this thing 6 ways to Sunday. So you guys have a great resource here. I think I'd be calling John all the time, man. I got another listing
But
appointment.
don't worry, they do.
I want everybody to ignore this and just call their own manager or else
That's good.
Dulal.
Okay, I have question over here. Actually, my real life experience last year, one of my client buy property is 1130, but they bought from builder is 1.3 million. But
Okay.
we are able to close property less than 170,000. But I have question currently one of person tell me to list one property and tell me to do CMA. Just today, this morning only. Just now I directly message to Erin. What happened, that particular area, all is brand new townhouse. Okay, there is no soul. Okay, on that area. Because builder just hand over to unit. On
Perfect.
that time, what should we do?
My personal opinion, and John's probably going to have a different one, is no, there are no sales. The first thing I would do is take a look at what they paid for it, how long they wrote the offer, and then I would try to factor in at a local level as much as I possibly could a change in price for that particular area, and then apply that to the property. That would be one approach. Probably not the most accurate. And then the second one would be to go for looking for similar townhouse complexes outside of that area and adjust for location that are relatively similar. And then I'd go and see John and say, hey, which one? What do I do here? Do you like the cost approach or the comparable? Which one do you want to do?
Yeah,
I understand that, but
in
what
in
happened,
this.
a whole particular area new build, within, this, I think more than 400 or 500 meters, whole particular area new build from
What would you,
builders.
Yeah,
what
They
would you
just
do?
yeah.
they were purchased.
So
Sorry, go ahead, John.
so the point is you have to put yourself in the shoes of the buyer. Am I going to buy a place in the brand new area? And actually, Emily Perry has a question, basically the same question in the chats. Am I going to buy in an area that has no trees, dirt roads, no sidewalks yet, still under construction, a lot of it? Or am I going to buy a townhouse that is 0 to 5 years old, preferably maybe 2 years old, something like that? And let's take a look at those prices now. Okay, which one am I actually going to like better? And a lot of people are going to buy that 2 year old townhouse in this example. And the other thing you always have to consider, Dulal, in this case is how much is the bank going to finance now? Just because the builder says the townhouse is worth $1 million, is it actually worth $1 million? Or is the bank going to look at the townhouses that are 1 year old and 2 years old and what are they selling for instead? And I would suggest that the bank's going to look at the 1 year old and 2 year old prices. So there's nothing wrong with looking at a brand new house, comparing it relatively soon to a house that's being finished in the last year or two. And usually you can find a comparable for that.
It's not
Okay,
easy,
thank
by
you.
the way, Dulal. You're not like it's not. This isn't an easy thing that you're being asked to do, right? There, I think the important thing is you put some thought and reasoning. I like the two approaches you had mentioned, like just thought and reasoning, or went into both of them. And are you going to nail it? Sometimes you're going to get the right, basic
And,
area. Go ahead,
But
John.
and there's another one too that you always have to consider when you're looking at a new subdivision is now that they want to know how much it's worth today. Well, in fact, they put their offer in for it 2 years ago. How much have prices changed in the last 2 years? There's a great example of an HPI tool for you to find out what the difference is in the values. Don't forget time.
Yeah, because it was sold at one point and there was market value put onto it at that point.
And on the selling side, emotionally, there's something, and I know this sounds horrible, but the typical buyer finds something appealing about buying their house, even though it's only 2 years old, for less than the original guy bought it for. It's like there's an appeal to that. And it's kind of like, well, they paid 1.2, but I got it for 1.1. And it's 2 years later. It's kind of like, hey, home run for me. That's how they kind of position that with their friends when they communicate. He paid 1.2, but I was able to pick it up for 1.1 a year later. Like I got a deal on it. Everybody likes that feeling like I got a deal, right? Yep. So that's just part of the human psyche on how people think, Dalal. Well, there's some stuff.
Yeah, I understand that. Actually, what happened, this just now I tell you this is one story, and previous one, which is my experience last year. Actually, the busy area in Scarborough, Midland and Lawrence there. Builder is called Medicine and project is Mila. Their closing cost is 1.3. Last year when we bought that property, after that nobody can sell on that area whole year. Multiple listing terminate, because everybody focus on our buying price. Everybody say, that they buy property is 1130. You cannot expect to get 1.2. But yeah, that time is their closing cost is 1.3. You see, 170,000 less they sell.
Yeah.
170,000 from builder buying price. Then on top of that, what they do now, they do renovation on the basement. Then there is 25 to 30K. They lose almost 200,000. Yeah, but that's why now is very difficult because a lot of listing coming to my side, which is really brand new house, and they tell me how much you can get. I say you buy on 2021, this maybe 100,000 less. Some properties 150. This one detached home, Midland and Lawrence there. I say if you want to sell, okay, can you need to minus up 400,000 because you buy property
No, you got to
1.8
stop.
million.
Personally, I'd stop doing that, Dalal, because you're going to screw up the original opportunity. What I would say to them is, prognosis without diagnosis is malpractice. For me to quote you a price without me coming and doing the proper homework would lack professionalism. So I guess the real question I have for you is, are you guys serious about selling your house? Because at the end of the day, I've got to go through the research and the work. Now, the benefit of this is you very quickly qualify people. Because when you say to somebody, I got to go, got to come and have a hook, I got to do the research, I got to do all of that. All of the people who aren't serious go, no, we don't need to do that. We were just talking right now. We were just curious. So it's a great emotional qualifier is what I would say to that. But don't tell somebody that. What you want to do is bring the data and use your questions again to help them choose the location to put their house.
Yep.
So yeah, don't be saying, oh no, you're down 400 or something like that. If you talk to me, that would be enough to be like, oh my God, this is terminal. I'm
No,
just going.
actual price, honestly speak with you, actually he buy on 2021 is overpriced. Friendly speak with you, he buy is 18 plus, he cannot sell more than 1.4 because what happened, if I spend time on that particular property and I cannot sell more than 1.4, is no use. Because nowadays, a lot of power of sell because they want to sell the property. When I talk to people, they really want to
So
sell
let
the
me ask you
people.
this question before we even get to that spot. Just out of curiosity, not that you'd be excited about it, but what could you take for this house? I haven't done my homework yet. I haven't even come to see the house yet. But I know what are you thinking? And if you don't get that price, what does that mean? You got to qualify a little bit better. I think the word that you're looking for is I want you guys to get lots of listings, but the word you got to add to the sentence is saleable listings. There's no value in loading up on a bunch of stuff. And problem with this is we have a bit of a hangover from the pandemic market because you'd take anything you could and everything was selling. Now we've got a situation where you can't afford to take everything because, some of these houses overpriced are going to be on the market. You're going to have a lot of marketing costs, time. So you want to be a little more selective about that. Or there's other solutions to that. I mean, you could say to the seller, listen, I can take it at your price for 30 days, but if it's not sold in 30 days or we don't have offers, then from a business person's perspective, the investment that is required on my part to make sure that the right person is aware of this, we're going to need to bring the property price down. And then what I would do is I would do a post-dated price reduction. At the time I'm getting my listing signed, I'd get my post-dated listing signed, my price reduction signed in advance to ensure that nobody develops amnesia a month from now.
Yep.
But these are all sort of the little intricate parts of learning how to elevate your game beyond the average in the industry. And you may not see this right now from the people that are on here, but the marketplace you're in is actually a gift. Right now it presents as a curse, but the skills for the people that are going to be strong enough to soldier through this real estate market and get to the next market are going to make for exceptional real estate agents. And the weak are going to get pushed out of the business. We see that. And I bet you, I don't know the numbers, but I bet you Treb's down in the last 2 years. I bet you we've lost people and we're going to lose more people. But the agents who use this opportunity as a chance to really get good at what they do, and you're going to have to. This market will become a survival of the fittest. And as you push through the other side, those agents that survive this will be exceptional in the next market.
Yep.
So this is actually a gift, but right now you feel like it's a bit of a curse.
Just from a timing perspective, I'm going to go through a few of the chat questions and then we'll wrap things up here. Jessica was just asking, are estimates not allowed anymore? And I'm not sure. I mean,
ask Jessica again. What did she mean by an estimate?
Yeah, in terms of
what does she mean?
estimates. And if so we'll get back to you on that one, unless you want to unmute if she's still there.
Unmute Jessica and tell us what you mean by an estimate.
And I think we answered the other question about how many comparables should we consider in the area. So we went through that. But just to that question, Katie, you're coming up with the top three. So if you have to go outside the area because there's not one in that area, it just gets a little less comparable, but you still want to use it and you still want to put some thought to it. So, and John answered as well. The Carson Dunlop renovation guide I'm going to show you guys right now. You can Google it, but it'll have all US prices. I've developed a sheet for you guys. I'm going to show you this. How does a property being in a developing neighborhood play into the CMA? Like multiple phases can be built in no grass, dusty streets, and dirt view. I will say pre-construction is a whole different story. I do find that they're often a different type of price analysis going into those, and a lot of times they're projected 2-year values, and sometimes they're under, and sometimes they're over, and they're slow at adjusting based on market conditions. They tend to be slow, so they tend to be a little off.
It's interesting, Carson and Dunlop. I'm negotiating with them right now to offer a coaching program for all of the home inspectors on so how they can be better at or not home inspect, how to interface better with the real estate agents so they can get more business from you guys.
Nice. I just want to be sure the pool is considered subjective. Does that mean the value depends on whether the buyer likes it or not? And can we adjust the price accordingly? Answer is yes, yes, yes. So it is subjective. It means that you can adjust the value depending on people. For the right person, a pool, especially one that is fairly new, is a high value. So they will pay more for it. So there is an adjustment there. It's just, again,
Where's your cottage?
Cottage is up in Copaconk.
So how far is that a drive?
It's an hour and a half.
Yeah, and that's on a good day without the traffic.
That's right.
Yeah, so see me, I go down to Zare's 2 minutes down the street. I get my steak and my beer. I go back to my backyard, and I am done.
And there's the pool.
So there's the
I was wondering where you were going with that, Chris, but now
day
I
of
got it.
vacation. He spends 6 hours a week in the car going to the cottage. I'm sitting outside having a beer. You gotta come visit me.
Oh, that'd be good. Yeah, absolutely. So just quickly, just to show you guys some of the resources, the playbook looks like this. When you do get into the playbook, and again, found in Google apps as well as on Remarketers Brokerage Hub, you can click on working with sellers. And one of the sections is your CMA, right? Comparable market analysis. You have a nice little CMA section with a standard procedure for doing CMAs and then doing the adjustments we've added in there as well. And doing adjustments, we'll go through exactly what we talked about today as a standard procedure. And at the bottom, cost adjustments for CMAs, a nice little link for you. And when you click on that, it'll download a file. And this is what the file will look like. And it has all the cost adjustments in there. And this is based on the Carson Dunlop numbers. Yes, it's a little older. I couldn't get they haven't redone their book in a while. So this is all basic. And the good news is that it went up and then it came back down. So we should probably be in and around where it was post or pre-pandemic. It's kind of during pandemic, actually. So these are all the Canadian dollars. So a major kitchen renovation, a standard 90,000, right? A major, I thought this was quite high, to be honest with you. But when you're paying $40,000 for just the Wolf.
I just had friends put in the US, in Georgia and Atlanta, put in a kitchen. It was 240,000 for the kitchen.
And there you go.
Just how much is the high one here?
180.
Yeah, so they put in Sub-Zero and Wolf and all of that stuff, right? So.
Yep. Basement, family room. So exterior, wood decks, wood finish siding. This is all from Carson Dunlop. So that is now a resource that we have for you guys. Roofing, flashing chimneys, structure of the property, electrical in the property, etc. Okay, well, I think there's a little bit more actually. Heating, cooling heat pumps, insulation, plumbing.
Wow.
It's quite extensive. Interior finishes and features. Yeah, there we go, guys. Emily, you had a question?
Yeah, can I ask a quick question for Chris? If there is something, say for example, down the road, there's a property and it has artificial grass, they've ripped it out, they think it has added, I don't know, $30,000 in value. You know that most people are going to be like, you're going to have to like rip that out and put down God knows how much in sod and landscaping. How do you have that conversation with a potential seller?
Well, I'm kind of a fan of artificial grass. I don't have it at my house. I don't. But my first experience with it was one of my coaches lives in Southern California and he has a pool. And when I was at his house, I was standing in the backyard and I got my flip-flops on and my shorts and I'm looking at this grass and I'm like, I said to him, I said, Craig, who cuts your grass? And he's like, what? And I said, this is the most perfect grass I've ever seen in my life. Like it was really, it looked like real grass. First of all, it did not look like, plastic crap. It was really amazing.
Yeah.
And then he told me it's artificial and I'm like, oh my God. Then I knew, and I'm thinking, well, California, right? I mean, it all works down, everything works down there. Nothing works up here. But I was out for a walk and there's a guy a couple of blocks from me and he's got a smaller house, but he's got like artificial grass out front and the stonework and everything. And I'm like, I like it. So can I first ask, why are you tearing it out?
Okay, I'm not tearing it out, but I'm thinking any buyer that this is not the nice stuff, Chris.
Oh.
So I'm thinking any buyer who shows up is going to say, I absolutely hate that. Or for example, I was doing an offer on a property and they had mirrored the entire staircase. They thought it was gorgeous
Right.
and it made it the house worth more. But for anyone for greater portion of the buyer pool,
Yeah.
it's not going to be the same thing, but they can't, like, I'm trying to see what your way of
So
addressing that to
are you thinking
a
that it's,
seller is.
so one of the questions I would one of the exercises I would probably go through is I would invite a landscape company come over and quote me. I would probably quote it in maybe a couple of steps. Second one would be the second company I'd bring in as an underwater sprinkler company to make sure I got a quote on that. And I would go back and say, at the end of the day, do you think it's going to be 30 grand to put turf in? How big's the house?
I don't think it's going to be. I'm just, what I'm saying is, and it's not about the turf itself. I'm just saying as an example where they think the value of the house is 30,000 more
Hmm.
because of their amazing upgrade in their mind, whereas you're like, oh no, it's going to take at least 20 to remediate this.
Oh, no, I wouldn't do
specific
that.
outlet.
What I would do is I'd say, okay, well, listen.
I'm just trying to get
Yeah.
how you would have that conversation.
Well, 20,000, depending on the price of the house, ain't the end of the world. But if it's significant, okay, like a significant number, 20, I can work, I can stick handle around 20 one way or another and work that down into a sale price. It's when it's more. So what I would do, there's another thing I might say is I'd say, based on our research, and I can see that you're not overly excited with with what the research is telling us. But at the end of the day, I also am quite aware that you're motivated to sell, whatever that reason is. Let's assume it's strong. And I want you to be confident that you feel that you've got the right value for your property. Now, there's something I rarely do, but I always have available to backstop our conversation to give you confidence. Because at the end of the day, I want to make sure when we're done that you feel really happy about the way this whole exercise was handled, the whole experience. So one of my suggestions might be, here's a list of every bank appraiser in Newmarket. Pick any one you want. I'll be happy to pay for them to come over and do the appraisal as long as we list it at or very close to the appraised value. So it's marketable. On the other hand, if you look at the bank appraisal and you say, no, that's not good enough for me, then you got to pay for that appraisal because I'm not going into my jeans to pay for an appraisal on your property that you should have, that would have solidified this situation. At the end of the day, what I'm saying to you though is, and I want you to think about this, the house will sell for the appraised value or the purchase price, whatever's the lesser of the two. And since 99% of the people in the country need to get a mortgage, then it makes all the sense in the world to have a bank appraiser come out if you're not confident with the data that we're looking at. But I just want you to be aware, the bank appraiser is going to pull the same data we did, and they're going to use that in their comps. So it's they're not going to have access to any more comps that we're not going to have.
I like your approach because you're getting other people to sometimes break the tough news. You never want to offend anybody. So number one, don't say you disagree with them. Right? Try and change the narrative and maybe put it onto somebody else. We often do that with stagers. We'll bring a stager in to convince them to change the color because you want to make sure it's not you offending that you don't like lime green,
Or the mirrors on the wall.
or the mirrors on the
wall.
balance. What was it? The staircase was full
Yeah.
of mirrors.
Yeah. I thought you were going to say in the master bedroom ceiling. I was like, oh my God, what are we going to do with
Oh
this?
God.
So putting it on. So there were stagers. There were you said appraiser. There was another one. Sometimes home inspector to do a pre-home inspection
Yep,
report.
absolutely.
These are other people you can bring in order to break the bad. Oh, and the last one, other realtors.